Welcome back to the 12 Days of Wellnessmas. Today we're going to be talking about my relationship with food as someone with IBD. Hello, if you don't know me, my name is Nina. I'm a certified professional life coach, and here on this channel, I am posting a video every single day leading up to Christmas around the topic of wellness. Today's video topic is around my experience with Crohn's disease, which is something that I tend to talk quite a bit about on this channel. Crohn's disease is a type of IBD, inflammatory bowel disease. It's a little different from IBS. What falls under the umbrella of IBD is Crohn's disease and ulcerative colitis. It involves inflammation and other issues throughout the digestional system, and that is a difficult thing to deal with on a daily basis when it is such a vital part of our functioning as human beings, and it has a lot to do with the topic of food and eating, which is in general a very tender topic for a lot of different people. I think it's pretty hard nowadays to have a purely healthy relationship with food. So I do just want to mention, of course, you know yourself better than anyone else, but since this is such a sensitive topic, it might not be an appropriate topic for everyone to listen to. Be mindful of whether you think that hearing my story around this subject will be more helpful or harmful to you. But my hope is that by sharing my unique relationship with food since having this disease, that you might be able to learn something. If you also have Crohn's disease or some type of IBD, hopefully this will help you feel seen and heard and less alone, because it is a very difficult part, a very real struggle with this disease. Now, my relationship with food prior to developing symptoms for Crohn's disease was interesting, because I've always loved food. Growing up as a kid, I was always a very adventurous eater. I was very keen to try new things. I was not a picky eater at all. I was a very easy child in that way for my parents, that I wasn't fussy at all. And I've always really enjoyed the ritual of eating, of sitting around a table with people, or even of like ordering in and putting on a movie. I psychologically just have always enjoyed eating. However, as a child, I was also always very sensitive, and this extended to my relationship with food. For pretty much my whole childhood, I thought that it was just kind of normal to experience frequent nausea. I really didn't have the capacity to eat all that much, especially things that were very calorically dense, like meat. And actually, I have always had sort of like interesting quirks around food, even though I was like a very easy, not fussy child when it came to the types of food that I would eat. I always had like really strange like turnoffs about the way that food was packaged, really. And I would have a certain amount of discomfort eating food in certain places, like if it wasn't an environment that I felt like fully comfortable in, or if it was an environment that I felt too overstimulated in, I couldn't focus on eating food. And so actually a lot of times at school, I would not eat my lunch, either because I didn't like the way that it was packaged, I didn't like things in Tupperware, or sometimes I would just like not even like be hungry or have any desire to eat around that time, because didn't have a huge capacity to eat a lot of calories, or I just felt like really overstimulated in my school environment, and it didn't feel like a comfortable place for me to sit down and eat. I also, for the majority of my childhood, did not eat breakfast, mostly just because like I didn't have the appetite. If anything, I would feel quite nauseous in the morning. I couldn't really stomach the idea of eating food. So these were really sort of like the first signs that something was not totally right with the way that my digestive system works, like this limited capacity to eat a lot of calories, this frequent nausea. But I would basically only have 2 meals. I would eat when I came home from school, and then I would eat dinner with my family. Along with kind of those indications based on my eating preferences that something might not be right with my digestive system, I also would have like relatively frequent bouts of bathroom problems, like diarrhea when I was a child. That was always like chalked up to me just being sensitive. I was a very sensitive child and I'm still a very sensitive person. But the first time that any sort of IBD was first on our radar, mine and my family's radar, was when I was 15. I had my first colonoscopy and they found aphthous ulcers, which are basically canker sores, in my ileum, I think, in my small intestine. But for whatever reason, I'm not totally clear on the reasoning behind this because my doctor and my parents were not totally transparent with me with what was going on. I wasn't actually diagnosed with Crohn's at the time. Now, the first sort of pivotal thing in my life that really changed my relationship with food was when I went vegan at 19 years old. I was living away from home. I was in a performing arts conservatory, living with a roommate in an apartment, not dorm lifestyle, no meal plan at my school or anything. I was kind of living a relatively independent, like adult lifestyle. And I decided to go vegan. When I went vegan, this drastically improved my relationship with food and it improved my digestional experience, like so much. That might not be the case for everybody. That might not be the case for everybody with Crohn's or with IBD, but that was the case with me. I had a lot more appetite and a lot less general nausea or like indigestion or abdominal pain after eating. And I also had a lot more energy, something that comes along with the experience of Crohn's disease or IBD, because these are autoimmune illnesses, is that they are really draining and cause a lot of fatigue on your body because your immune system is basically just acting completely out of line, doing so much work that it doesn't need to be doing. And digestion is so hard. Digestion is something that takes up a lot of energy, and that is tenfold when you have IBD. So fatigue is a really common symptom in IBD. It's a really strong symptom in my experience with Crohn's. With going vegan, it also helped my constipation. The vegan diet has a lot more fiber in it, and vegan foods are also a lot less calorically dense than animal products. And so that allowed me to have more appetite to eat more food and to feel satiated without feeling nausea because I wasn't eating as heavy of foods. I know that a lot of people who go vegan, when they're first doing that transition, they report feeling a lot of gas and bloating. That wasn't my experience at all. I think because I always grew up on a high legume diet because I'm Latin. It was rice and beans every day. So I think that when people go vegan and they're focusing on those plant-based proteins like beans and lentils, those legumes, that ends up shocking their system quite a bit with a lot of gas. But I already ate a very high legume diet. So I think that's what kept me from having that issue in my transition to veganism. So I went vegan when I was 19 and I started having serious Crohn's symptoms pop up that led me to my eventual diagnosis when I was 24. But for those 5 years that I was vegan leading up to that point when I was 24, I had the best relationship with food in my life. It wasn't perfect still. I think that some parts of being vegan and being more focused on what I was eating were really healthy for me. Like, I really enjoy being very intentional with the food that I choose. I also felt a lot more comfortable cooking. I think cooking meat is like really intimidating. It was really intimidating to me. And so I felt a lot more comfortable cooking plant-based meals. I felt a lot more excited about the meals that I was making for myself. I was eating a lot more home-cooked by me meals than I was in my first year of college. I was eating a lot out. I was eating a lot of like packaged stuff that you would get at the grocery store. So I really enjoyed that aspect of being more conscious about what I was putting in my body, being more intentional about the food that I was eating. But at times, that sort of preoccupation around what I was eating would veer in the direction of obsessiveness, would veer in the direction of a little bit of a disordered mindset around my diet. But those were brief phases that would pop up from time to time if I was experiencing some other sort of stress. And I felt like I needed to exert some sort of control to feel more safe, to feel more comfortable. That's the pattern that I noticed with that. But in general, that period of my life was the best relationship that I ever had with food, and it was the best that I ever felt, like physically, in regards to my digestion. Things unfortunately changed for me seemingly overnight. From one day to the next, I was hit like a truck with a bunch of Crohn's symptoms. This was a period of my life where I was dealing with a lot of stress. I was like the busiest that I had ever been. And because I was the busiest that I had ever been, I'd sort of fallen off the wagon, I guess you would say, of cooking and eating homemade whole food meals. I was ordering more takeout. So for a long time, actually, after developing those Crohn's symptoms and being diagnosed with Crohn's eventually, I spent a lot of time blaming my diet on why this Crohn's came up. I was like, oh, I was eating a lot of takeout. I was eating more processed foods than I know that I should have. But upon further reflection and understanding of my disease, I understand that it actually didn't have anything to do with my diet at the time. As I look back, I see that going vegan was the best thing that I could have done for my Crohn's. I think that it delayed the severity of my Crohn's kicking up to the point that it is now for at least 5 years. And it's not like my diet, like in the first 5 years that I was vegan, was devoid of processed foods. Like, I loved a good Beyond Burger. In fact, I went vegan before the Beyond Burger came out. So that was like monumental when that came out. And before then, I was still eating like veggie grill and processed like soy protein stuff. Like, I wasn't a stickler like whole foods, plant-based, freely the banana girl person. So it doesn't really make sense that just because I was maybe having a few more Beyond Burgers than I typically would have, that suddenly I would have this chronic illness pop up in my life and hit me like a ton of bricks. But that is always people's assumption. In my experience, when it comes to their opinion on why you have Crohn's or why you have IBD, it's you did something wrong with your diet. And I can confidently say, and people will argue with me about this, people who are not doctors, who are not medical professionals, will argue with me about this and think like, no, it must be your diet that caused you to develop this. But I can confidently say that it has nothing to do with the food that I was eating or the food that I do eat, the fact that I have this chronic illness. And the reason why I can say that so confidently is not only because of what I just sort of said about like, hey, I just added a couple more Beyond Burgers per week to my diet. That doesn't seem to make enough sense to me that I would develop Crohn's. But also in my experience of dealing with Crohn's for over 2 years now, this full-fledged Crohn's at least, because I think that I probably had it before, I will have continuous symptoms no matter what I eat, no matter what I change in my diet. There are a couple of things that will elevate the symptoms, that will make them worse. But basically, I have bad days and I have worse days. And there's no type of food that I've tried, at least, and granted, I haven't gone back to eating animal products, but there is no sort of recipe, no pun intended, to not dealing with these symptoms. It just is like, no matter what I eat, I will experience these symptoms to some extent. Now, caffeinated coffee, bad news. Grapes, oh my God, who would have thought grapes do a number on my stomach? And when it comes to like brainstorming, okay, what kind of diet can I take on that will not cause these symptoms in me? I sort of get to a dead end, because you might be thinking like, okay, you say that you will have symptoms no matter what food that you eat, but you don't eat animal products. What if you ate a Liver King diet or ate chicken and eggs or whatever? That to me doesn't make sense, because my experience when I did eat animal products was that I didn't feel good, was that I felt unwell. And sure, maybe it might be different now, maybe my body needs something different now, but animal products take a lot longer to move through the digestive system, so that to me doesn't sound like something that would be good for me given my digestive state. But then again, like, things with a lot of fiber also are harder on your digestive system. And so with someone like me who's got a very precarious situation going on down there, fibrous foods also aren't really great. But it's like, nothing is really great. So that's just a little rant about how annoying it is that there's like basically nothing that is like a safe food, at least in my experience with Crohn's. What's out there and what I've heard from my doctor is basically like everyone is going to have their own particular trouble foods. There are some things that are like relatively common out there. Like I know that a lot of people with IBD, a lot of people without IBD are like, coffee is no bueno for my digestive system. I know that grapes is something that a lot of other people with IBD will say is like not a good move for them because of the skin and the seeds. But all that I basically hear about are foods that are not good. I never hear about a food that is like, this is great for people with Crohn's, this is great for people with IBD. Any food has the potential to be a trouble food. But before like reaching this level of defeatedness that I am at this point when it comes to foods, there were a couple of things that I tried doing, that I tried changing in my diet when I first was diagnosed. The first sort of protocol that I chose to follow was something that I got from a book about like healing IBD through diet, and that was to get an allergy test, a blood test to check for food sensitivities, basically. These things that you might see in like Instagram ads. They're like basically direct to consumer products. They give you like a little kit and you prick your finger and you drop your blood on these little dots, and then they send you an email and say, hey, these are all of the foods that you have sensitivities to. And it's basically checking for some sort of antibody reaction that would indicate a food sensitivity. Now, I'll tell you already that that experience didn't go well for me. Since doing that whole process, I've come to learn that people who are very experienced in this field, doctors who specialize as allergists, do not recommend these types of tests to anybody, but especially not to someone with IBD. Apparently, the fact of the matter is that these tests aren't actually very accurate. And so what happened is that when I received the results from this blood test telling me what I had food sensitivities to, it was like 21 foods. 21 is a lot. To cut out 21 foods in your diet is a big deal for anyone, especially someone who already has dietary restrictions to begin with. But truthfully, it was a lot more than 21 because it's not like I was just allergic to 21 vegetables or whatever. I was allergic to particular ingredients like yeast, baker's yeast and brewer's yeast. There is so much yeast I learned in like vegan products like Beyond Meat. Having a sensitivity to brewer's yeast meant that cut out any type of fermented food. And it's like, okay, what are fermented foods? Like kimchi. Okay, you're not gonna have kimchi. There are so many things that you don't think about being fermented. Olives, anything with vinegar has brewer's yeast. And people just chuck vinegar in like everything. One of the biggest things that was like such a hindrance to my diet was that I had a sensitivity to carrots. Every single vegetable stock that you will ever find in your life has carrots. It was really, really difficult and annoying. And at the end of the day, I cut out all of these 21 plus foods and ingredients, and absolutely nothing changed. I did not get a single sliver better. I didn't get a single drip of relief from my Crohn's symptoms. So it was a complete waste of time, money, and it was such an annoyance to have to be so restrictive of what I was eating and so like sad to eliminate all of these foods that made me happy. And now another thing that might not be super obvious, but that really affected my relationship with food having Crohn's disease is the fatigue that I experience with this disease. With the amount of like crippling fatigue that comes along with Crohn's, it makes it really difficult to do a lot of things, and that includes cooking. It's so demoralizing to use the little tiny teaspoon of energy that you might have in a day to slave over a stove and make something that at the end of the day is going to make you feel terrible. And that, especially if you're going about like restricting a lot of foods, might not even taste good. I remember like early on, before I was even diagnosed, just like experiencing these Crohn's symptoms, I was trying to make a potato casserole, like something big that I could put in the fridge and like eat throughout a week or something, so that maybe I wouldn't have to cook as frequently. And I was just like standing there in my kitchen, peeling these potatoes and shredding these potatoes after a long day, like so nauseous, feeling so terrible. And I just started crying because I was like, this is so unpleasant. This is so hard. This is taking so much out of me. And I know that I'm not gonna even want to eat this once I'm done with this. And I was just like, what am I even doing? And so like after a while and like realizing that it really didn't matter what I ate, I was going to feel terrible regardless, I kind of just said like, fuck it. I'm going to eat what I want for the pleasure of eating. And I had a huge takeout era because I didn't want to cook. I didn't feel up for it. Fortunately, my boyfriend is like this rare species of human with this like quality that I cannot relate to, who like really enjoys cooking and has like an intuitive sense to it and like understands what spices and such will make a good flavor profile, etc. So that was a huge win for me to lock a man like that down. I'm coming back from spending about 3 weeks away visiting my family in Brazil, and I'm taking this as an opportunity to reset my eating habits and find a new game plan for what I'm dealing with here. I feel really bad saying this, but like it was really difficult on my body and on my disease to spend that much time with my family, just because like food is such a uniting thing in family culture, in Latin culture certainly, and I try as much as possible to mask how terrible I'm feeling in any given situation, but especially in like joyful family celebrations, obviously. And the thing is that like when you have like dietary restrictions, like I'm vegan, not being able to eat necessarily what everyone else is going to eat, people in my family would get like really excited to like make me something special that only I could eat. And like it could be the case that a lot of people would bring like a lot of different dishes specifically for me, which is like so sweet. Oh my God, I did not expect to get emotional, but like in a situation like that, you don't want to turn anyone down. You don't want to reject anyone's gift to you. So I ate like so much more than my body would have liked me to when I was out there, which like, God, like under any other type of circumstance, like this would not be a problem. Like, oh my God, having a plethora of like options and like abundance of food to eat, like this is some sort of like twisted hell where this like beautiful gift and like beautiful opportunity is actually like torturous to me. And so now I'm feeling quite a bit worse daily. I'm on a medication that isn't doing anything for me. It's just some hoop that I need to jump through for my insurance to then allow me to get on the preferred medication for Crohn's. And I'm experiencing on the daily like the worst nausea and some of the worst abdominal pain that I've ever experienced in my life. The mind is incredible. The mind is incredible because I am at any given moment only not throwing up because I am like not allowing myself to focus on my need to vomit. If I pay attention to that feeling, I will throw up. And when I do throw up, it's usually on an empty stomach, and it's just that bright green liver bile. Sorry if that's too much information. So eating has been harder than ever. It's even hard now to like even have the psychological motivation to eat. I'm hoping that at this point, with the way that my symptoms are worsening, this will at least be an opportunity to like beg my insurance to finally let me move forward with treatment. But basically, it's like soup. Just soup, 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 homemade soup. And for breakfast, this is the only like psychological ritual that has maintained. For breakfast, I eat the same thing that I've maybe been eating for like a year and a half, which is 2 pieces of sourdough toast, veganese, topped with arugula, very, very thinly sliced tomatoes, and some salt. None of those things are probably things that I should be eating, but also like there's only one list in my life, and that is the foods that I should not be eating. The list of foods that I should be eating does not exist. So what am I supposed to do? So basically, after all of this, after this whole journey that I've led you through, the relationship with food that I'm trying to cultivate at this point with my IBD basically involves me taking care of myself in other areas outside of diet so that I don't have too much extra stress that further complicates this issue in my life. So it's important for me right now to be very routine, to do very gentle exercise, basically solely for like the mental health purposes. Like I'm not focusing on doing any sort of exercise for the sake of my body. That's just like not necessary. So it's a lot of yoga and a lot of walking, having a lot of wind down time, basically like my meal times are extremely sacred just because I need a lot of time to even just like recover from eating. So I basically just like don't have the stomach or the like time budgeting for lunch because it's very necessary at this point in my life to eat dinner very, very early and to do like absolutely nothing after dinner except for maybe clean the kitchen. I know that this may not have been like the most uplifting video. So I was even like vacillating around like, is this really a good idea? Is this really a good thing for me to post? It's such a sensitive topic, but selfishly, it's something that I just feel like therapeutically I need to share, I need to put out there. And B, yeah, it's not a very uplifting video, but the truth is there are not really a lot of uplifting things about IBD. This is a very difficult thing to deal with in so many ways. And if that's not being talked about or shared about out there, it makes you feel just all the more alone and deficient because it's like, why is something that should be so easy, that should be so instinctual, that should just like one of those innate human processes that we need to do to survive, why is that so difficult for me? But the truth is, this is not a very rare disease at all. And so it's not just me, it's not just you. And I hope that maybe with me talking about it candidly on here, you might have the opportunity to reflect on your relationship with food and how you can do your best in your circumstances, whatever they may be, if you are dealing with some sort of IBD. But that's all that I have for you for today, and I'll see you tomorrow for the next day of the 12 days of Wellnessmas. Thank you for watching. Bye.